a really, really good friend of mine, someone that I've got the utmost respect for in the world, that has literally impacted millions of people's lives when it comes to having more success, getting on track, understanding what it truly takes to win in business. This individual has it all. More importantly, he lives it all. I've spent time with him on a personal basis, spent time with him and his wife, Barbara. He is one of the most connected people on the planet, but I'll tell you something. He's one of the hardest working guys you will ever meet when it comes to creating success, not to mention the fact that he's quite brilliant as well. Brian Tracy, how are you?
I'm just great, Bill. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing awesome, blessed, and so excited about 2012 and all of the unbelievable potential that's coming down the pathway. And I know that this morning, obviously, it's way early for you, but you're out in Hawaii, and thanks so much for plugging in where I'm sure it's a little warmer than here in windy Chicago.
Right. It's really quite beautiful. Thank you.
So for those of you who don't know who Brian Tracy is, maybe they've lived on a rock somewhere. They really haven't been connected to anything at all. But could you share with everyone, our listeners all around Chicago and around the world, who is Brian Tracy?
Well, I'm just like most people. I started off from a humble background. I didn't graduate from high school, and I worked at laboring jobs until I got into sales. But the turning point in my life, and I still say this, was when I began asking the question, why is it that some people are more successful than others? And began asking the answer. And that's really has sort of guided my whole life. And what I did is I found out the answers. And what I found is that if you do what other successful people do, you soon get the same results that they do. And if you don't, you don't. And nature is neutral. Most amazing, still to me, I still sit there and think, imagine, nature's neutral. Nature doesn't care if you're tall or short or young or old or educated or uneducated or anything else. All they care about is that if you do what other successful people do over and over, you eventually get the same results. And that insight changed my life and changed the life of millions of other people.
And so when did that turning point take place? When did all of a sudden you wake up and say, you know what, this is really the core path?
Well, about my mid-20s. And, of course, almost always when you hit the wall, broke, frustrated, going nowhere, holes in my shoes, one clip-on tie, living on the floor of a friend's apartment, at a certain point you start to say, this lifestyle sucks.
I tell people all the time, I say, and I've been broke and I've been wealthy, and I can promise you, broke sucks.
Yeah, and the other thing, then you look around you, and here's another thing, is you see people who are dumber than you who are making more money than you.
Right.
And you say, how can this idiot be making so much more money than me? And you go and ask him, and you find out that he's done certain things. And that's what I'd like to talk about in our time together. Just a couple of ideas to help people to make 2012 their best year.
Well, that'd be great. Yeah, if you could, let's just dive right into that, because obviously, people are logging in from all over. They only have so much time. But give us some great keys that you, from the Brian Tracy brilliance, right? What are some great keys that you believe it's going to take to become even more successful or find success in 2012?
Well, every year I make a decision. I hope everybody makes this. Is that this year is going to be the best year of my life, irrespective of anything external. This is going to be the best year of my life. And so my first point is always clarity. So you ask the question: if 2012 was the best year of your life, what would happen? And what you do is this. It's a great exercise I learned from a very smart man a few years ago. Is project forward to December 31st, 2012, and then say, this year has been the very best year of my life because I accomplished the following. And then write down all the things you accomplished to make it such a great year. In other words, you do this in retrospect. Back in the 90s, the top-selling book on strategic planning was called Competing for the Future by Gary Prahalad. And what he said was that future intent determines present action. I mean, it's a couple of very small points, but it made it the best-selling book of the decade. And he said, if you can be absolutely clear about your future intent, where you want to be at a future time, then it has a backflow effect, like a reverse domino effect, all the way to the present moment. And then what you do is you simply evaluate each action each day and say, is this consistent with where I want to be at the end of the year? And if it is, do it. And if it's not, don't do it. And it's such a simple thing. So you say, and second thing is, 2012 was the best year of my life because I did. And talk about the things you did to make it a great year. The subjects you learned, the courses you took, the time management that you practiced, the things that you focused on, the skills you developed, and so on. So make a list of everything that would have happened, the goals you would have achieved, and then the things you would have done to achieve those goals. And with that clarity in mind, now you have a track to run on. You have a target to aim at for the whole year.
Wow, that's pretty good. And have you done this in years past? And and obviously has it? Have you noticed a significant difference when you began to put these principles into motion?
I do this here. I'm in Hawaii right now. I come over here and I go through this process. I have never done this, but I haven't developed at least $1 million business idea that turned into $1 million in business or more the following year.
Wow.
It's just the most amazing damn thing is you actually activate your superconscious mind when you have a clear picture of where you want to be, but then you leave the detailed step-by-step path out for the time being. Not forever, but for the time being. You just get real clear about where you want to be at the end of the year. And then the most amazing thing is you start to have all kinds of ideas and insights. Like I had my $1 million idea yesterday. It's very, very clear to me. Last year, I had a $1 million idea that has been fully launched. The year before, I had a $1 million idea. Each one of these has generated more than $1 million in actual revenues in the following year. So does it work? Yes, of course it works.
Yeah, one of the things that I found is that, and that's why I'm not a big believer in motivation. I believe that, if you motivate a bunch of idiots, what do you got? A bunch of motivated idiots.
Absolutely.
But if you can start and help people understand that it's about having a great path, purpose, and some vision, and watch that vision begin to pull people, and I think that's you're starting, and it goes back. It goes back to a guy named Vince Lombardi, right? He said you start with the end of the game in mind, right? He never played. He played every game long before they hit the gridiron. They knew the plays, they knew the system, the program, and before they ever walked on the field.
Yep, absolutely. Now, the second C, I call these C's. The second C is control. And this is perhaps the most important of all. It's the first chapter in Covey's book, the first chapter in Jack Canfield's book, has to do with the acceptance of personal responsibility. The big thing that guts people, that kicks the chair out from under them, is that they blame their problems on other people or they make excuses for their situation instead of just saying the magic words, I am responsible. I am responsible. And everybody who's listening to this today has been badly treated by other people, has been lied to, betrayed, deceived, cheated, let down, sued, and everything else. This happens. Breathe in, you breathe out. If you're active, you're going to have problems, and they're all going to come with hair on top, as we say. So what you have to do, and it's a little thing that I've learned to say over and over again, is no villains, no victims. No villains, no victims. In other words, you don't get mad at people who have hurt you. You just let them go and get on with the rest of your life. And it's just like driving past a car crash. You just go past it, you take a look at it, you go on down the highway. And the other is no victims. You're not a victim. If something happened to you, well, you breathe in, you breathe out, life happens. It rains on the just and on the unjust, as Jesus said, and you get on with life. So you say, I am responsible. I'm responsible for my own life. I'm in control.
So taking ownership.
You're taking ownership.
Yeah.
Accepting ownership, taking ownership, accept the fact that you're where you are and what you are because of yourself. If you don't like it, it's up to you to change it. And what that does is it gives you the power. It gives you the control. Puts you back in the driver's seat of your own life. You see, what happens is you can never give away control. You can only give away power. And you give away power by being mad at somebody else, by blaming somebody else, by making excuses, by complaining, by criticizing.
That's a big problem we're having in this economy, Brian, is that everybody's
Absolutely.
passing the buck. It's always somebody else's fault. And we've got a little bit of time left before we go to break. And obviously you're listening to Brian Tracy here at the rainmakershow.com, AM 560 in Chicago. And this is just great stuff. Obviously, you didn't get to where you're at by accident. You got to where you're at because you've served and helped a lot of other people. So is there anything else you want to add quickly before we go to commercial break?
Yeah. What the greatest problem in the economy today is people want something for nothing. From Obama and all of his people paying out $525 million to a political contributor. That contributed $100,000. You got $525 million of government money, all of which disappeared.
Yeah, well, they approved a business plan that nobody studied.
No, they approved a business plan that was rejected by everybody who looked at it.
Everybody.
And they said, we've got to get this out because the guy gave me $100,000 for my campaign.
And now they're going to spend another $25 million or more trying to figure out what happened to all the money. Well, the bottom line is that if you invest in a defunct, terrible concept company that's not thought through, pretty good chance you're going to fail. So, Brian, we're just talking about the challenges that are facing the economy. And I know that this is it's a sore spot today because I don't know that a lot of these guys have the answer. They're getting more rhetoric. But I'd like to go back before we talk about politics for a minute. I'd like to go back to let's finish this conversation on some other great tips that you have for people to have even more success in 2012.
Okay, now when we talk about the C's, the first C is clarity. Be clear about how you want your year to end up. The second C is control. Take responsibility. No excuses. No blaming. You're in charge. The third is competence, Bill. And this is the most important thing of all. This is the thing that is just destroying the hopes and dreams of tens of millions of people in America. They don't understand that a job is an opportunity to contribute value greatly in excess of the amount you receive. And people don't understand that. They think a job is a place where you get a paycheck. No, is you have to do a job and you have to do the job well. There's no future for people who do mediocre jobs. They're the last ones hired and the first ones laid off. So competence means you make a decision to be the best. And you make a decision to be in the top 10% in your field. Now, every single study that I've read for 30 years shows that every single person who makes that commitment and sticks to it eventually gets there, no matter where you're starting from. But you've got to make that commitment. It's going to be a lifelong, and it may take you 5 to 7 years to get into the top 10%. But one of my favorite little stories is the story of Willie Sutton, the bank robber, who was asked, well, why do you rob banks? And he said, well, that's because that's where the money is. Well, why do you want to be in the top 10%? Well, because that's where the money is. That's where the hope and the fame and the glory and the money and the big houses and cars and travel. There is no money if you're not in the top 10%. And the only thing that keeps you out of it is a failure to decide to get into it and then to follow up your decision with action. So you have to decide, where am I going to be in the top 10%? What am I going to score at? What am I going to do well? And you have to pick something like a laser beam, like a sniper. One shot, one kill, and then you have to set it as a goal and develop a plan and work on that plan every day.
Right, be a specialist. We teach be a specialist because generals get paid, specialists get wealthy.
Exactly, and Malcolm Forbes once said the byproducts of a manufacturing process often are worth more than the actual product manufactured. He said the byproducts of busy life are time. It's the time you have before and after work. And if you use 2 hours of those byproducts 5 days a week, a little bit in the morning, a little bit in the afternoon, a little bit in the evening, 5 days a week, 2 extra hours a day, that will put you in the top 10% in 5 to 7 years. But this is extra. This is on top of just doing your job. This is where you put your whole shoulder into actually self-improvement. And there's some wonderful studies that are coming out on what is called deliberate practice. And this stuff is I think, the greatest stuff on success I've ever read.
Could you repeat that one more time? What's it called?
Okay. Well, the University of Florida came out with a conclusion. They studied people for 25 years to find out how people started at the same starting line, broke, educated, uneducated, and a decade or two later, some were at the top of major companies, and the great majority were still struggling. And they found the one differentiator was that the people who moved ahead engaged in what they call deliberate practice. At each stage of their career, they asked the question, what one skill now will help me the most to move ahead? They didn't try to develop 50 skills. They just identified one shot, one kill. They just developed one skill. They said, this is the one skill. It may be negotiating. It may be giving public presentations. It may be closing sales. It may be writing good advertising copy. It may be time management. But what they said is, what skill will help me? And they asked around, what skill do you think would help me the most? And people around them could say, do this. Their boss would tell them, their friend would tell them, their spouse would tell them, if you were really good in this area, that would help you more at this stage of your career than anything else. And so they would pick that as a goal, make a plan, and work on it every day. In a month, a year, sometimes 2 years, they would have mastered that skill, and then they repeat the process. And then they do it again. It's like, wash your hair and then repeat. What they do is they keep repeating the process. At each stage of their life, they're working on developing the next key skill. And after 10 or 15 years, they've moved so far ahead of everyone else that nobody could ever catch them again.
Wow.
And so competence, without being in the top 10%, as you say, being a specialist, you have no future. All you do is be a generalist, last hired, first fired.
Yeah, you're gonna watch everybody else succeed. I mean, one of the things that we talk about a lot is that understanding how to tap into what's called unconscious competence, where literally you become the one or become what's called an intuitive performer because it goes back to owning that space. You know, if you think about the success stories that are out there today and look at the people that have become specialists, they've become the wealthiest, most powerful people in the world in less than 20 years.
Yep. And here's another thing with regard to competence is that you have to offer an excellent product or service.
Yep.
Not only must you be good, but your product or service must be excellent. And you've been to my program, and I developed my whole program around a very simple concept. Is you can absolutely predict your business and financial future by how often people say one thing. And it is, after using your product or service, they say, this is a great product or this is a great service. The percentage of times that you trigger the word great from customers is going to determine your entire financial future. And so that has to be your focal point.
Can you say that one more time? The number of times your customers say that your program was great is going to determine your financial future. Is that correct?
Yeah. For instance, if you go to a restaurant, people walk out of the restaurant and they say, that was a great restaurant, or that was a great dinner. Or they go to a movie. I like to use The King's Speech as an example, because you go to that movie, you walk out and you say, that was a great movie.
Right.
And you and as soon as you watch that movie, you just hear all the Academy Awards falling into place. Academy Award, Academy Award, Academy Award. You knew that. You knew because it was a great picture. Braveheart, great picture. Certain movies, great pictures. Your product or service. Apple products are the best example. People use an Apple product, they turn to somebody else and say, gee, this is a great product.
Yeah, they know it. I mean, obviously, they've done such a brilliant job of leading the field in technology. When you think about what Jobs was able to do, and just to put all those music companies together to be able to launch the platform for iTunes was brilliance in motion. And that's just the beginning of where this is going.
Absolutely. You know, it's interesting. You study Thomas Edison. Thomas Edison developed the incandescent light bulb after, 11,000 experiments. He had it. But then he found there was no electricity. So what he had to do is he had to back all the way up to Niagara Falls and build a hydroelectric dam. He had to build hydroelectric generating plants, and he had to wire from that Niagara Falls to New York in order to provide electricity for the incandescent bulb. Can you imagine that? And
that's vision. That's vision.
Yeah, and Steve Jobs, he comes up with this idea for the iPod, and he has to get all the other major music companies on board. To offer their individual songs for 99 cents.
That was unbelievable. I mean, that's one of the greatest feats of negotiation I've ever seen in my life was that ability. And people don't even know how that even happened, but that's a whole other story for another day. So, Brian, obviously, we've only got a couple minutes left here, and I'd like to do me a huge favor and just, first of all, respect you, love you, think you're at top of your game, and I'm always learning from you. And, of course, if you're listening today and are there any programs that Brian offers, I would highly recommend from the top of any that the programs are great. Not only are they good, they're great, and they're going to serve and help you create more success and find more clarity, competence, and success in your life. But what is a good website that we could just give out? Do you have maybe a main website you could give out that the listeners could go to and get some information?
Just come to briantracy.com.
That's easy enough.
briantracy.com, and our programs are there. The one thing that I would recommend more than anything else, and I recommend it to myself, is you've got to become very good at selling. You could be the finest person with the greatest opportunity and the greatest products or services in the world, but if you can't sell them, both online, through excellent copy, on telephone, through excellent conversation, face-to-face. If you can't sell, you could be sitting on $1 million product, but it will just lay there like something in a garage. So each person who is an entrepreneur should be working every day. You breathe in, breathe out, get a little bit better in selling. Read something, try something, but keep working on improving your selling skills.
Listen, I'm going to bring you back for that political talk because I know that's a whole nother show by itself. And this economy is in a world of hurt, and programs that you're offering that help entrepreneurs create more success and step into that. Listen, you need to be an entrepreneur today. You need to find new ways to make money, because if you think that you're going to be able to survive on what the government's going to pay you, you are living in fantasy land. Brian Tracy, it's been awesome. Listen, enjoy Hawaii. Thanks for all your time. Thanks for all that you do, and thanks for all that you're going to do.